Hello and welcome to another painting video. In this video I'll be painting a unit of Melusai Blood Sisters, the dreaded danger noodle murder ladies of the Daughters of Khaine army. Awesome looking models. I've put a lot of effort in making the snake part of the model look very good. It's only 5 models, so some extra added effort should be doable. Let's begin, shall we? After priming the model with Wraithbone and masking the top half of the model, I'm base coating the lower part with Incubi Darkness. The paint was a bit watery, but that actually looked really good. Next, I'm spraying a mix of Stegadon Scale Green and Sotek Green as a zenithal highlight on the snake tail. I do the same with Sotek Green, focusing on the upper parts of the tail. And I end with a spray of Sotek Green mixed with Temple Guard Blue to create a gradient. The tail lost a little bit of shading, so I use Targor Rageshade to shade all the ridges between the scales. Now here comes the time-consuming part. I layer Temple Guard Blue on all the scales. Yes, all the scales. Why not a dry brush? I don't think the scales offer much height to effectively dry brush the tail, and it will give a dry looking texture to what should be a smooth looking tail. I layer again with a mix of Temple Guard Blue and Blue Horror. Finally, I highlight the tail with Blue Horror. I did highlight the inner part of the tail, but I later decided to add some contrast, so I'm painting it now with Celestra Grey. To make it look more interesting and shaded, I paint Mortarion Grey on the inner part of the tail here. I had some panel liner winter camouflage laying around, which I used to further heighten the shading. It's a greenish color, so it fits. It's very situational, so you could also use Nuln Oil or another darker shade if you have that. I bring back Celestra Grey to the edges of the sections. And I highlight the previous parts with Ulthen Grey to make the tail look shiny. This was a lot of steps. For the airbrush bits, you could try to get the same effect with a dry brush if you do not own an airbrush. These are elite warriors and few in number, so they deserve a little extra effort. Now let's have a look at the top part next. First, I paint the skin with Guilliman Flesh mixed with some contrast medium. I layer on a mix of Flayed One Flesh and Pallid Wych Flesh to the upper parts of the skin. Then I shade the skin with Mortarion Grime, this to make them look a little bit different than the Witch Elves. These ladies are mutated after all. Then I paint Pallid Wych Flesh on all the raised areas again, and I make sure the Mortarion Grime shade is still showing. They look very pale, similar to the Witch Elves, but the green hue gives them a nice, subtle difference. The Bloody Sisters use the same weapons and armor like their Witch Elf sisters, so I paint all the metal with Iron Hands Steel. All the gold I paint with Skullcrusher Brass. I shade all the metal with Gryph-Charger Grey. This gives it a very nice bluish tone. I shade the gold with Guilliman Flesh, giving it a very nice warm tone. Metal is highlighted with Runefang Steel, and gold with Canoptek Alloy. You might think there is no difference between Runefang Steel and Canoptek Alloy, but the latter really works well as a highlight of brass and gold. It's a bit more warm and subtle, and I can really recommend it. The gems on the model are first painted with Wraithbone. Then I paint them with Akhelian Green contrast paint. Highlight them with Temple Guard Blue. And finally add a dot of Ulthuan Grey to create a light reflection. A very simple way to make fancy looking gems. To connect these danger noodles with their witchy sisters, I'm painting their little tabards the same color as the Witch Elves cloth. I first base coat with Screamer Pink. I shade the cloth with Nuln Oil. First I layer on a mix of Screamer Pink and Screaming Skull to the upper parts of the cloth. Then I add more Screaming Skull to the previous mix to highlight those areas. The armor is held by some straps. These I paint with Dryad Bark. Shade with Druchii Violet. And highlight with Baneblade Brown. Let's add even more crazy hair to this army. First hair color is a Druchii Violet mixed with Lahmian Medium. The second hair color is Tyran Blue mixed with some Lahmian Medium. Both hair colors I dry brush with White Scar. No standard hair colors for these ladies. The bases I paint the same as the Witch Elves. First I use Darkoath Flesh on the entire base. I shade with Targor Rageshade. And add 2 dry brushes. First with Xandri Dust. And second with Screaming Skull. The rim of the base gets painted with Corvus Black. And here we have a unit of deadly danger noodles. The tail parts were a lot of work, but I'm happy how they turned out. In the near future, I will paint the ranged version of this unit, and I will give them different colors, so you have options. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, be sure to check out my Instagram, where I post pictures of current projects and behind the scenes stuff. But for now, thanks for watching.